Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode on the Sports Stories Podcast. I'm your host, A.J. McSwain, and for today's episode, I think we'd be going over why Terrelle Pryor's career didn't work out in the NFL. And for most people, they remember him back when he was on the Browns as a wide receiver. Now he played quarterback near the early years of his career. That's when he transferred over to wide receiver, when really the quarterback market wasn't really open for him. But I'll go ahead and dive further into that during the episode. But as a matter of fact, let's get right into it. So now, starting off with his college career, he was a top prospect in high school as a quarterback. He started off playing Ohio State for 3 seasons from 2008 to 2010 as a quarterback. There, he completed 60.9% of his passes, or 60.9% completion percentage, 6,177 yards, 57 touchdowns, and 26 interceptions. Now, that doesn't really sound like a big, or not the worst stat line, but not the best. And overall, a lot of people at Ohio State really liked him. They were a really good team back when he was playing. And if you remember playing some NCAA games with him in it, it was a really good competitive game, especially with Terrelle Pryor. He was elite in that game. But overall, he was a really good player at the college level. But that's when, the first issue kind of came up in his career. He was caught exchanging memorabilia for tattoos, so that goes against the NCAA rules, since you can't receive anything from what you are doing with the team. So, or he got some beneficiary funds, so in that he was, he wasn't allowed to go into the combine for the NFL draft in the 2011 season, going into the 2011 season, and so he had to apply for the supplemental draft, and in the supplemental draft, he was picked with the first overall pick in the 3rd round by the Oakland Raiders. Now, he played with Oakland from 2011 to 2013, a span of 3 seasons. He played in 15 games and started in 10 of them. He had a 56.3% completion percentage and had 1,994 yards. With a whopping 9 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So now, obviously, looking at that stat line, his career wasn't the best in Oakland. I mean, he basically played an entire season, he didn't really start an entire season, but he played an entire season and still didn't really have the best stat line. And it wasn't really like that team was the best back in the day, but still, it just wasn't the best stat line. Over a 3-year career, that's basically about 5, he played in about 5 games per season, and only probably started in 2 per season, and everybody remembers that 93-yard run that he had, which is still one of the longest, running touchdowns, by a quarterback in the NFL, and overall, he looked promising, but it just didn't work out for him. So after 2013, he was actually traded to the Seattle Seahawks for a 7th round pick, and then I believe he was cut by Seattle, and he was waived by a lot of teams. So he kind of bounced around, for about a year, from, to the 2014 season. And that is when, in 2015, he declared that he'd be playing wide receiver. Now, his agent told him that it would be better to move to wide receiver, since it just looks like nobody was really looking for a quarterback at the time, and, nobody was really interested in his quarterback skills, and he hasn't really proven anything at the pro level, especially with the Raiders. Didn't really look too good, so, he said that he'd be a wide receiver, and he's working on that for about a year as well, or not in 2015, but I believe in 2014. He declared as wide receiver. So that is in 2015, the Browns actually picked him up. And he played in 3 games and started in 2 of them. He had 1 reception for 42 yards on the season. Obviously not the best. But it was enough to keep him on the team. So in 2016, this is the year that Terrelle Pryor really broke out, and a lot of people actually remember this season. Now, Terrelle Pryor was, did not look good whatsoever, but coming into his 5th year in the league, yeah, I mean, this is a lot of prime. This is where the primes for NFL players really start to come through. This is Terrelle Pryor's prime year. So in 2016, he played with the Browns. And I mean, he began the season pretty early on in the season. He was awarded the number 1 wide receiver spot, and I mean, he really just took it off from there. He played in 16 games, started in 15. He had 77 receptions for 1,007 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 55% catch percentage. Now, overall, I mean, that was just a great stat line, and a lot of people remember this. All 3 quarterbacks on the team got injured at one point, so Terrelle Pryor stepped in and played quarterback. He also played safety in that same game that he played quarterback, and he also played wide receiver. So he played 3 different positions in an NFL game, and I think that was the first time since the AFL-NFL merge, all the way back in like the 50s. So, that was a really incredible thing to see there in the modern NFL. And overall, Terrelle Pryor just looked like he had a really good year. But unfortunately, his contract came to an end, and he was asking for a lot of money that, let's just say that the Browns didn't think that he was worth. So, he kind of bet on himself. It didn't really work out in free agency. He ended up at the time, the Washington Redskins at the time. It wasn't the best. He played 9 games, started in only 2 of them. He had 20 receptions for 240 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 54.1 catch percentage. I mean, still not the worst, but definitely compared to the really good season that he had in 2016, it was definitely a step down. And here you'll kind of see the decline after that 2016 season. He played for 2 teams in 2018. Yes, 2018. He played for 2 teams. He played for Buffalo and the Jacksonville Jaguars. With the Bills, he played 2 games and only started in 1. And he had 2 receptions for 17 yards with a 25% catch percentage. And with the Jets, he played 6 games and started in 0 of them. He had 14 receptions for 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 63.6% catch percentage. So overall, decent. But yeah, just after that 2016 season, you kind of just see the decline within his career and just how his play was. I think the hype from that 2016 season just never really matched, and he couldn't really get back to where he was. So if he played it safe and got another contract with the Browns, maybe we could be talking about how Terrelle Pryor is probably one of the best wide receivers now in the league, was, I guess, because technically this was if 2016 was his 5th season, he would be going into his 11th season, so, he'd be a veteran at this point, but, just not the best, after that 2016 season. He just could never really get back to where he was. And one main contributor to Terrelle Pryor's career not being as good as it was is that in his time in the NFL, he had 9 injuries. He had 1 concussion, 1 MCL sprain, a finger sprain, 3 hamstring strains, 1 ankle sprain, and 1 ankle fracture, and 1 groin tear, which is one reason why he didn't play that many games in Cleveland. He had that groin tear. And along with his injuries, the relationships that he had with other teammates and other team members from the other teams that he played on. I mean, during his stint with the Redskins, he made a lot of enemies there, and with the Browns and with the Jets and the Bills. Basically, everywhere he left, he seemed to already have been an enemy there. So a lot of people just didn't like him. And that kind of, leads up to, if you're a free agent, you're going into a free agency and you're trying to, get a team, but you have a bad reputation with other teammates from other teams, it's not the best look for you. So obviously some teams are not going to want you, and obviously it's not really that good. But as for Terrelle Pryor now, he's currently out of the NFL, and it seems unlikely that he'll return. He did get into a domestic abuse situation with his girlfriend, where he was, I believe, shot or stabbed several times, but he did come out survived, or he did survive, I guess. I don't know why I said it like that, but he survived that attack, and obviously not in the best situation there in court, because domestic abuse, obviously, so I won't be delving any further into that, but it's just not the best situation for Terrelle Pryor outside of the NFL, so it doesn't look like he is coming back. But overall, I think that Terrelle Pryor could have made a name for himself. I think if he didn't bet on himself after that 2016 season, I think if he just played it safe, got another, he probably would have got a decent amount from the Browns. I mean, he had a great season, over 1,000 yards receiving. The touchdown ratio wasn't really all there for the amount of games that he did play, but because that's about 0.4. No, I'm not sure, but let's be honest. Quick maths. That's not me. But the touchdown ratio per games that he played just wasn't there, and maybe that's why he decided to bet on himself, because the Browns really didn't have much. But overall, I think he could have had something with it. He just asked for too high of a contract, ended up leaving the Browns, and couldn't really get much in free agency. So, who knows where he would have been if he just stayed with the Browns. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys remember Terrelle Pryor? It's gonna be kind of interesting to see. Comment down below. Also, with the algorithm here, just going on a big rant about the YouTube algorithm. Apparently, if there's not enough likes and comments on the post, it kind of affects on how it goes onto recommended feeds. So if you are watching or listening to this, just make sure you're leaving a like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching, obviously, and then leave a follow and a 5-star review if you're listening to Spotify and Apple Music. That'd be greatly appreciated. But that'll be it for today's episode. I hope you guys did enjoy, and have a great rest of your day.